Hey folks, this is Dr. Nystrom. Welcome to the first session on a series of self-directed lesson sets on plot. The idea here is you're going to have a chance to work at your own pace. You will get a chance to review some videos like this one on a topic that'll have some information for you to learn and some activities for you to do. At the end of that, you'll take a brief assessment, and if you do well enough on that, you'll be able to move on to the next session. So you can work a little bit at your own pace. So let's take a look at this. We're talking about plot. And I know that you have all done plot before, but as we do it now, we're probably going to run into some new vocabulary and some a little bit more deeper nuances of how plot works. So just as a bit of a review, we're going to talk about plot in terms of 5 different elements, the first one being exposition. Exposition is the beginning of a story where we're going to get setting and characters. Now remember, setting is the time and place for a story, and characters, you know what characterization is. And so when we talk about this, for example, let's think about the story that we were just going through, Ordeal by Czech. Our setting was in the United States, in California, Hollywood, and also a little bit in France, because remember, Senior took his girlfriend to France, his mistress to France, and the time is sometime between 1903 and 1930 something. So it's early 1900s, right? So in the characters we know there's Exeter Senior, Exeter Junior, there's Exeter Senior's wife, Exeter Senior's mistress, and Junior's girlfriend, and there's also a strange character named Tony Spagoni who shows up. So those are the characters. So we've got exposition and our setting and our characterization done. Rising action is when the story gets going. Characters run into some kind of trouble, some kind of problem. Climax is when they hit the top of that, or the highest point of tension. They hit that conflict and they have to finally make a decision. And so not only is it the highest point of tension, but they make a decision about what to do with it. And then from that decision comes falling action. And this is where the story kind of starts moving pretty quickly to the end. And the falling action is the fallout from the climax, fallout from the choice that the character made. And that gets us to finally one of our new words, I presume, denouement. Denouement is a French word, and this is the ending of a story. It's a French word that literally means untying the knot. And what happens in denouement is kind of our resolution for the story, but it pushes us to a deeper level. It gets us thinking about the whole story, the story in total, and gets us thinking about, well, what was the reason for this story? Why did the author present us this story in this way to lead us to this kind of a conflict with this kind of a character, and the choice that the character made about resolving the conflict? Ultimately, that takes us to theme, and that's the purpose for plot. Plot is a tool for us to get at theme. Okay, and then I also want to point out that you've probably seen plot sometimes described graphically like this. It's called Freytag's pyramid, and that's because the story builds. You know, we talk about a story building to the highest point of tension, a climax, and then very quickly moves to the end of the story. And that's sort of a graphic perspective on plot. Sometimes authors can play with that, and they can do little climaxes before they go down to a final exit. So they can do all sorts of things. The whole point is that authors know they can use plot as a tool. They can manipulate it to convey the message that they want to convey. Okay? So let's take a look at this a little more carefully. Here we can see how the elements of plot are laid out across a story, right? So we got the beginning. Of course, the beginning is where the story starts. We go up to rising action, we hit our climax, and we come down to falling action and our denouement. Now, what each of these elements is is something that we want to talk about. I will go through them in pretty close detail, but I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. So as we move into this next frame, here we go. You'll see a lot of information here. I want you to know that I'll talk through this with you now, but I'm going to put this information all onto Canvas. So you'll have it there and you can take notes from it there. That way you don't have to worry too much about capturing all the notes right now. All right, so let's talk about exposition. Exposition is about setting and characters. We talked about that before. And this is where the story takes place. It's when the story takes place, and it's who is involved. Sometimes we also get an inciting incident, and that's what complicates the main character, also known as the protagonist. The protagonist is the main character of a story, complicates the protagonist's world. And that's what makes a story in the first place. Otherwise, we wouldn't have much of a story. And that complication, that inciting incident, is going to lead us to an understanding of rising action, which is about conflict and obstacles. Conflict is the challenge that the character, the protagonist, runs into. Obstacle is what gets in the way of resolving that conflict. So let's say we have a story about Jamila, who is hungry, and she wants to go and get a hamburger. She goes to McDonald's, opens up her wallet, and the $5 that she had there is right there. She takes it out, buys her hamburger, and that's the end of the story. Not much of a story. But if Jamila is hungry, that's the conflict. How is she going to resolve that conflict? And the obstacle is that she opens up her wallet and finds the money is gone. Well, now we've got a challenge. We've got something getting in the way of resolving that conflict easily. All right. So that's the notion of a rising action. Climax is the highest point of tension. And by highest point of tension, we mean this. The story has been building to the highest point, the hottest point, the moment when the character has to make a decision. And the character makes that decision, and that then becomes the breaking point. The breaking point at which the character has to decide, I'm going to resolve the conflict in this way. So we go from the highest point of tension to the breaking point. That's the climax. All right? Okay, so based on what the character decides for the climax, that is going to lead to some results. This is the fallout from how the protagonist overcame the obstacles to resolving the conflict. And that, again, this part of the story is moving very quickly. We come to the denouement. And denouement leads us to the resolution and the theme. In the denouement, we find that our protagonist is either undone by her choices or is relieved by her choices. Undone means it's some kind of catastrophe. Something bad happens. The character is distraught or ruined in some way. Or maybe something great happens and the character is uplifted and honored and in that way relieved. Oftentimes in the denouement, we find out that this is a moment when the character is ready for a new adventure. The story here ends and the character is ready to go on to do something different. You've seen movies, you've read books where it comes to kind of an end and you can say to yourself, oh, I see a sequel coming out of this. That's the new chapter. That's the new book. That's the new movie version coming up. Okay, so those are the details of plot, and that's all you really have to know about plot. Although that's a lot to know. We've got some new vocabulary in there. But I also want you to remember this. The main purpose for plot is that it works as a tool authors use to convey meanings to their readers, to convey a lesson, a message to the reader. And a lesson or a message is the theme of a story. So remember that plot is really just a tool that authors use and readers use to engage in a dialogue in order to better understand theme. Okay? That's it. That's the end of the first video. You're going to go on and take a little assessment about what you learned here. And when you're done with that, you'll move on to session 2. And in session 2, we're going to watch a video, and we're going to practice identifying the elements of plot in that video. Good luck.